Why is it that so few men are going to college? Why are there less men than ever before going to college institutions? As of 2021, there were roughly 11.5 million women who were going to college and 8.7 million men within the United States. So it was roughly a 56 to 43% ratio. And that divide in 2022 got even bigger. So there are less men year over year. I believe the stat was 41% college graduates or college admission was men this year. There are less men going to college than ever before. Now, is this a problem? Yes and no. Not necessarily. It's not an issue if you're a man and you don't want to go to college, because there are a ton of reasons to not go, right? College admission, college price, the cost to go to college is higher than it's ever been before. It's absurd. We saw over the pandemic that most college institutions, even though you were taking classes from home through Zoom, you weren't even showing up to college campuses, most colleges actually raised their tuition prices. And so a lot of people are coming out of a college degree with, $100,000, $200,000 in debt, and starting at an entry-level job, making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year becomes very challenging to pay off that debt over your life. And so I think a lot of guys are looking at this as, is this even worth it? Not to mention that college campuses have become a hotbed of anti-male sentiment. I think when I've talked to a lot of young men, because a lot of you guys, tune into my channel, I think something like 34% of my channel are men between the ages of 18 and 28. And then there's a much bigger proportion of men who are 28 to 44. But a lot of you guys message me, because I've talked about this before. You message me on Instagram, you email me, because I've been talking about this for a while, and say, why do I need college? I can go into a trade. I can start a business. I can make money that way. Yes, that is true. But I think one of the things that's interesting is that for a lot of women, they look for men, especially women who have college degrees, right? The 12 million women who will graduate with a college degree, they look for men who have college degrees. They look for men who have education similar to them. Remember, women date up and to the right. They date men who are of equal status or standing or above. That's what women traditionally and historically have looked for. And when you look at the data today, that's really not a lot different. Women are still looking for men who are equally educated, who are equally earning, who are equal or greater than them in some way, shape, or form in terms of status. So why are so few men going to college? To be honest, if I was a young man today, I would struggle with this decision. And I delayed, after I graduated high school, I had terrible grades in high school. I didn't really care about school and academia necessarily. It wasn't really built for me. I had problems sitting still. I had ADHD. I was probably like the first guinea pig on Ritalin way back in the day when the drug first came out, like in elementary school. And academia was really something that I struggled with because that's not how I learn. I'm not the guy that sits down with the textbook for hours and memorizes stuff and then regurgitates it on a test. It's not how I learn. It's not how I operate. But what I learned later on in life, and I did go back to school eventually when I was about 23, 24 years old. I went back and got a degree, but I got a degree in music. And I was pursuing something that was more mentorship based. And the things that I really struggled with in school was the more academic part of it, right? I did great in English, but I really struggled with like music theory, which is, quite a bit more technical. I really didn't enjoy it. But the problem that I see a lot of men having, and I had Richard Reeves on the show and we sort of talked about this, is that most educational institutions are not designed and developed for men, for young boys, for the way that we develop. They're not necessarily developed or designed to educate men in a way that supports us. And so I think a lot of men are opting out from college for a number of reasons. One, it's hard to justify the cost in America. It just is. In many other countries, it's so much more affordable, or it's part of the social system, and it's something that makes sense, right? You can go and get a degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. You can come out, you have a good job that's set up for you. And you're not burdened by $100,000 of student loan debt that you have to pay off immediately and that you can literally never get rid of, even if your life takes a turn for the worse and you go bankrupt, right? So I think there's that one part, right? Mathematically, logically, it's hard to make it make sense unless you're going to a degree where you're kind of assured a very high ticket job or career on the other side of that. And then I think that a lot of men are moving towards trades. They're moving towards building a company, building a business, getting into a specific trade. And then finally, I think there is a massive resurgence. And here's where I think the opportunity is for you as a young man or however old you are. I think that a lot of men are moving towards apprenticeship-based ways of learning and apprenticeship-based education. Now, this is where I've thrived in life. My education in psychology, in therapeutic modalities, has largely come, I've learned a lot by reading books and by going into textbooks on my own, but I have learned most of what I do today and most of what I know today by sitting at the feet of mentors, by taking on really old school, traditional style apprenticeships, right? So my first apprenticeship was with a man who was in his early 70s. He was a French-Canadian guy who knew a tremendous amount about Jungian psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistics programming, Buddhism, Zen, Taoism. And I spent about 2 to 2.5 years apprenticing with this man. And so I would pay for his time. And when I couldn't pay for his time, I would basically volunteer around his farm. So I would give my time to subsidize the time that he was spending with me. And so what I would do was I would help him with his asparagus farm. I would help him chop down trees. I did the carry water thing. I helped him. He raised Rottweilers, and so I helped him with his dogs. It was a really interesting thing. But I created an exchange where I would pay him for his time, and then because I couldn't pay him all the time, I would subsidize that by supporting him around his farm as he was aging. And that created a beautiful dynamic, but I also learned a tremendous amount firsthand. And I think this is what a lot of men are searching for. I look online and something like YouTube, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, which has started to grow quite a bit, and thank you for everybody that tunes into that. It's been growing exponentially alongside my podcast, which has been a blast because I've been investing a lot of time into that. But I see a lot of men watching, do-it-yourself YouTube videos, training videos on YouTube, how to get better in relationships, how to be better in the bedroom, how to, build your own table, how to improve your carpentry skills. All of this is accessible online. And so you can literally learn how to do almost anything online. And I think a lot of men love and appreciate that modality. There is something baked into our masculine cores that really enjoys sitting down with somebody who has mastery. Over the years, right now, I work with a gentleman, again, who's in his early 70s, who's been doing Gestalt therapy and equine therapy, which is working with horses, for 40 plus years. This man has 90,000 hours, 90,000 clinical hours of working with patients, working with people. And I have found a tremendous amount of value in that. And I've actually had this dialogue and conversation with myself. Do I go back and get a master's? Do I go back and get a PhD? Do I need that? And I think for certain things, there's still merit in that. I think specifically within psychology and therapy, you look out at the sort of modern narrative and mainstream media, they traditionally are going to promote people who have the degrees. But for the most part, I have built an incredibly successful company without the degree. And it's just not a necessity anymore. And I think with the rise of things like artificial intelligence, where you'll be able to learn languages, skills, trades, trading, financial acumen, all of these things you'll be able to learn much faster with AI for much cheaper. I think with the rise of those types of things, there is this huge emerging market that is going to that I already think is happening, that's already emerging within apprenticeships, right? Apprenticeships are actually up 50% year over year for the last 3 to 5 years. So I think if you're a man that's out there who has a skill, if you're in your 40s or 50s, you've built up a successful business in a specific area, and you have a skill or a trade or knowledge in a certain area, my advice, for whatever that's worth, I don't like to normally give advice, but I would really encourage people to start to look at, is there a way for me to create an apprenticeship program within my world, within my niche, within my skill set, and within the area that I have mastered? Because there are going to be hundreds of thousands and millions of men, especially in North America, who in the next 10 years, the next 5 years, are going to be looking for an apprenticeship. We are going to return, my gut and my guess and my bet, and what I'm betting a lot on in my own life, is that we are going to return to a blacksmith style of education where you sit with the expert and the wisdom and the knowledge of a certain skill is passed down. And I think that there's something very rich and historic and traditional about that, specifically within masculine culture. And we're seeing a resurgence of that, even within the weekends that I host with my colleague and my mentor. A lot of men are coming out to go through a kind of initiation, to sit with people and go through a kind of apprenticeship where they learn new skills, they attain new psychological, emotional, physical assets, and they learn how to do things from people who have been immersed in that field for a very, very long time. So whether you're in the finance space, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are an actual blacksmith or a carpenter or an electrician or you're an artist, whatever it is, I would really encourage you to begin to look at this new form of education. Not this new form of education, the return, the sort of as what's his name? The weird guy with the hair and the strange voice, it'll come back to me. But the archaic revival, right? This notion of an archaic revival that I think our education is returning, and a lot of men are returning to this space of, I want to sit with people and learn from people who have actually been out in the world learning. It's like one of the reasons why I didn't want to go back to go get a master's in psychology is that a lot of those people have been lifelong professors, and they actually don't have the type of expertise and wisdom that you're going to get with somebody who has been in the field working hands-on with people for the entirety of their life. It's just a very, very different thing, right? It's like you can go and learn business and entrepreneurship from a professor who has studied business and entrepreneurship, or you can go and learn from the entrepreneur that has built a dozen companies, failed 3 or 4 times, and had massive successes 3 or 4 times. And the value in that is just something that you cannot put and fit into textbooks. So to summarize all of this, why do I think that so few men are going to college? I think that many men are starting to wake up to the reality that maybe that traditional education system that has put us on an industrial complex sort of line that says you go to school, you graduate from school, you go and get a college degree, you graduate the college degree, and you go and work a 9-to-5 job, and you move up the corporate ladder over the course of 40 years. I think that many of guys are tired of that, and it's not appealing to them. And so they're looking for and trying to source out new ways of building their skill sets, of building themselves, and And I think that we're going to see more and more of that. I actually think that in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to see less and less men going into colleges and universities. And it is going to, in some ways, create some discrepancies within corporate culture, within marriage and dating. I think it's going to put some duress on some of those areas. But comment below. Let me know what you think about this topic. Why are less men going to college? What do you think they are opting for? And what are the possibly negative and positive outcomes that are going to come from this? So either share this episode, man it forward, comment below if you're watching this on YouTube, or DM me on Instagram @ManTalks if you are tuning in to the podcast. And until next week, this is Connor Beaton signing off.